What is up, everybody? Are you ready for a little fiery Friday here as the Bills head coach search gets ratcheted up here going into the weekend? Welcome into the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast. Some big news today. Bunch of interviews down, a bunch more to go this weekend. And then obviously we'll get into how we think this weekend could impact the entire search. But Brandon Beane promised that he was going to cast a wide net. Doesn't matter if the coach is going to be old, young, experienced, first-time head coach. And the one today would definitely be a first-time head coach. Ryan Talbot, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, you're right. I mean, just retired again from the game. So would be quite the leap if that were ever to be the case.
All right, so we're going to go through, I guess, our wish list. Like, that was kind of the fun idea that we had to put on this and maybe rank where things are at. I think the best way to go about it would be to go through the coaches and the ones that are being interviewed that are on the interview list, and then the ones that are probably waiting on the other side of the championship games. And then at the very end, we'll kind of come up with maybe our top three, and we'll rank what we think if we were making the decision where we fall on it right now. Does that sound fun?
I love it. I love it.
I love it too. All right, let's start off with Philip Rivers, the absolutely shocking name that came across everybody's timeline today, and that has elicited a unbelievable spectrum of reactions. I mean, there are people that are calling this stupid, that the Bills are even like entertaining this idea. Talbot. And then there are people that I think are intrigued, and there are people that are taking it super seriously, like, oh, I'm all in on this idea. I want to start by saying that I think it's interesting. When I first saw the name, I was kind of rolled my eyes a little bit and had this reaction like, all right, Philip Rivers, he's never coached an NFL game. Is this kind of like a PR stunt? Maybe you'll consider him for more of like a quarterback's coach or something like that. And this is just kind of throwing him a bone type of thing. But the more I kind of settled with the idea, the more I, watch clips of Philip Rivers, interviews from when he came back. He was actually asked about if he'd want to get into NFL coaching. And like, there's just a couple of boxes that he checks as a former high-end NFL quarterback that I think are intriguing, right? I want to say, if you were even to consider bringing him on as a head coach, I think you'd have to bring on two really exciting coordinators that could call the game on both sides. Because if you're bringing in Philip Rivers as a first-time head coach, you probably need to bring him in as somebody that can that you don't have to put too much on his plate. He's coached high school, Ryan, for the last 5 years. So
yeah, shout out St. Michael Catholic High School.
Yes, 41-15 record, no state titles, but he did get to the semifinals in the state tournament the last 2 years. I have more thoughts, but let me bring you in here. Your entire kind of reaction to this name.
Last episode, you brought up the name, and I said no, dumb idea. I still think it's a dumb idea at the end of the day. Adam Schefter was talking with someone about this, and they're not, if they're interviewing him, it's a serious thing. He's going to be well prepared, this and the other. If that's the route that they're going, like this is a true head coaching interview, I absolutely hate it. If it's for a offensive coordinator where you have a play caller as your head coach, like a Mike McDaniel, and we'll get to Mike McDaniel separately here later. Okay, McDaniel's a great play caller. Rivers can learn the ropes eventually, something like that. If it's for a quarterback's coach, I'm all aboard. That sounds great. I understand that the Bills right now are sitting on their hands. They've got nothing but time. There's a lot of coaches on these Final Four teams the Bills want to interview. I'm guessing from Seattle, potentially from the Rams, Denver as well. They've been linked to Davis Webb. So there's a lot of guys that they have to wait on. So yeah, uncover every rock. But the idea of a playoff high school, a former NFL quarterback turned high school head coach becoming a NFL first-time head coach when you have Josh Allen, you have a roster where you're hoping that is still a Super Bowl contender year in, year out. It sounds ridiculous to me. That'd be like me, saying, hey, I'll give you my number for my buddy Chad Bartosik, former NFL practice squad tight end for the Colts. Played with Peyton Manning, Matt. head coach of the Salamanca Warriors. Shout out Salamanca, my hometown. Made it to the state finals a year ago. He's got as good of a high school coaching resume as Phillip Rivers, if not better. So when I think of it that way, it just sounds preposterous and ridiculous to me.
So I don't think it's preposterous only because playing with Peyton Manning is different than being in those moments like Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers, right? Like this is a guy that's played the toughest position in sports, that if you go back and even watch these last couple of games that he came back and played in, there are few players in the NFL at this position over the years that have been more in command of an offense, scouting a defense. I mean, he was calling out defensive assignments before it even happened off the couch. So, like, if we want to talk about NFL offensive football acumen, I feel like there's few people that I would put at a higher level than a Phillip Rivers, more so than anybody that's ever coached the game. But to your point, there are definitely reservations for opening up the door to a first-time head coach to come in. Like, I don't question his leadership. I think that I don't question his toughness. Like, I think one of the things I really love about the Brian Daboll idea, and we're going to get to it, is that I think Josh Allen needs somebody that's going to come in here and coach him hard. And I don't know about Grant Udinsky. I don't know about Clint Kubiak and like their ability to connect with a quarterback and be hard on them and have hard conversations. There's a big difference between reclamating Sam Darnold in Minnesota when Udinsky was there, and then this year in Seattle, keeping that going for Kubiak, and what you're walking into with Josh Allen. Like, he is a once in a generation talent at the position. And like, to me, that's more of the thing that I like about the Phillip Rivers idea, is like, he's going to come in here and he's been in Josh Allen's shoes. He's been in all of these big playoff games. He actually was the iteration of Josh Allen before Josh Allen. Now, I say that he wasn't the same level of quarterback, but getting to this proverbial wall year in and year out and failing. So I think it would be kind of a cool story if he goes into coaching and is the guy that gets Josh Allen over the hump. Again, we'll get to the ranking where all these guys fall. He's not my number one. He's probably not even my top three. But I'm giving it a little bit more credence, a little bit more credit than I think a lot of people are.
I think you are as well. And if he wants to become an NFL head coach someday, just, go through the ropes, coach another year or two at the high school level, get a lower level college job, work your way up the ranks there, or even a year or two with a college job where you do really well. And then maybe NFL teams would say, okay, he's been calling plays. This is more legitimate now. I'm just not there. I'll put him ahead of Anthony Lynn because what are we doing there? But that's about it for me. He's pretty low on my list.
Dominic Williams, I've been saying for your super chat, thank you so much. I've been saying for years that the Bills needed to go get Eric Bieniemy as a head coach, and now the Chiefs come in, bite us in the beep once again. I do think that Eric Bieniemy is actually an undervalued offensive mind in the game. Like, I think it would have been interesting at some point to see him get an opportunity. Now, I will say that when he left, I'm bringing it up right now, when he left Kansas City the first time, it didn't really go well, right? Off the jump. He went to the Commanders as the assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. He spent 1 year there, and it was just the offense never really got going. They didn't have great stuff at the quarterback position. I think that might have been what was it, Howell? Was that a Howell before they got Jaden Daniels?
Yeah.
So then he ends up going to UCLA to be the OC there, comes back, and he's the running backs coach for the Bears this year. And listen, he did a great job, right? They had a great running game, but that was also Ben Johnson. I also think it's interesting to think about Bieniemy through the lens of, okay, now you go get to spend a year with Ben Johnson. What value does that present as a potential candidate? And but it went so poorly for him in 2023. I think that's why he didn't see a lot of head coaching opportunities this cycle.
And that's the vicious part of this. 1 year you're a hot candidate. 1 year you're on no one's radar anymore. And that's why I always say, when you are one of those hot candidates, go out, take the interviews. And if you can somehow get one of the head coaching jobs in the NFL, by all means, take it. I mean, I can go all the way back to Mike Pettin with the Bills. He was a great DC. He had a nice run in Buffalo, becomes a hot candidate, takes that Cleveland Browns job. And it was the right move at the right time for him because I didn't know what that window would look like. And mind you, it didn't go well in Cleveland overall. But for some of these guys, you got to jump when the opportunity is there. And I think Bieniemy in this case, going back to Kansas City after being with the Bears, it's not a bad thing. You're very familiar with everyone there. You can bring some new ideas that maybe you learned from Ben Johnson, but he's got to kind of work his way back up the ranks. And there were whispers at one time that he could end up being like the heir apparent there. I don't necessarily think that's the case anymore, but who knows? Maybe if this really does go well in his new tenure there in Kansas City, something good could come out of it.
All right, so 5 interviews down, 3 more to come the rest of the weekend. Let's go back through the ones that have already happened. So Joe Brady, Brian Daboll, Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator from the Colts, and then the additional one today, which was a little bit of a surprise because I think there were some people in the NFL that didn't think that the Bills would be interested in, at least conversations I had, in interviewing Mike McDaniel, but he ends up getting an interview. Now, he agreed to become the offensive coordinator with the Chargers, but that is if he doesn't get a head coaching job. So he could still interview for some of these head coaching jobs. If he gets one of those, then he'll take his name out of the hat in LA. Thoughts on McDaniel? Because this is, to me, the most polarizing one, because I want to remove some of my own personal thoughts on observations from afar. I've mentioned several times on the show, I was really out on him when getting a chance to see him on the Hard Knocks show. But I don't think you can deny the coaching job that he did this year when Tyreek Hill goes out, and this looked like on the path to maybe the number 1 seed, to get these guys to fight week in and week out, to win at home against the Bills. Oh, got a little dog action in this one.
Always.
I thought that was, pretty impressive coaching job by Mike McDaniel. And I don't think you can argue against the pedigree, right? Like, from the McVay tree, great in the run game. Like, to me, if you take Joe Brady and Mike McDaniel, and those are probably the 2 guys that you trust the most in terms of this cycle of being able to come in here and create a balanced dual threat attack. Where do you land on McDaniel?
If you can get me 2 solid coordinators that are, an offensive coordinator that's going to be hard on Josh Allen when needed, a good defensive coordinator that, guys that are going to help keep this culture where it's been, I would not be against Mike McDaniel. In terms of play calling, there are few offensive minds better than McDaniel, in my opinion. Now, you can argue that he went away from the run too often in Miami. I wouldn't disagree with that. But the way he schemed guys up, how good he made Tua look, the way that he could work with players going out with injury and really not miss a beat at times, I'm very impressed. And from the X and O standpoint, I love that they at least brought him in, because Josh Allen's sitting in on these interviews. I'm sure some of the questions are going to be, how would you utilize me if I was your quarterback? And then you do get into that deep discussion. And, that should not be the be-all, end-all. Allen should have a say, but not the overwhelming say in this final decision. But I like it from that perspective, knowing how good of an offensive mastermind he is, because then at least he can explain to Allen how he'd be utilized. That way, being in Pagula after the interview's over can ask Allen, what do you think of this? Would this work? What are your takes on this? And that list is going to go on with everyone else that they bring in for interviews as well. Having Allen sitting in there, I think, is going to be beneficial, even though that's getting some criticism on a social media and a national level as well. I like McDaniel, the play caller, but you would have to have 2 really good coordinators that can help in terms of, again, offense side of the ball, to helping Josh Allen, be someone that's going to remind him you can't turn the ball over the way that you do at times. And on the defense side of the ball, someone that's going to be able to come in here and help revitalize that unit, because that has been a letdown of a unit the last few years.
Yeah, I think the more I've sat and ruminated on McDaniel, the more open I've become to the idea. I don't know about how he jive personality wise with Josh Allen, but at the same time, I think that's probably one of the big reasons the Bills and Brandon Beane and Pagula and Gwelly have Allen sitting in on these meetings. Like he actually goes back quite a ways with Phillip Rivers. I might have known this at one point, but this kind of was a surprise to me. Albert Breer reported Rivers did a classroom and field work with Allen to prep him for the 2018 draft because the two share an agent. So that to me is something, I mean, he goes all the way back with him as somebody like put him in the bucket of Jordan Palmer as guys that had an impact on him early in his career. I don't love the idea of making like Josh Allen like a prong of the executive team, like doing these interviews and maybe like collabing afterwards as a group. Like I think that Josh Allen he doesn't have the best track record when going and picking his guys, right? Like, I think that you could probably make the argument that Dawson Knox is here long-term because of Josh Allen and that relationship. Ken Dorsey getting the offensive coordinator job. Joe Brady, I think, has had a better run than some would give him credit for. But again, that was another Josh Allen pick as well. So I don't know. I think this is something that there's a lot going on here, Ryan. On one hand, we don't know exactly what Josh Allen feels about the Bills moving on from Sean McDermott. He was very close to him. I would argue that he probably has a closer relationship with Brandon Beane, but still very close with Sean McDermott. And so when you make this change without him involved in the decision, now maybe you're trying to overcorrect and make him part of what the next iteration of the coaching staff is going to be spearheaded by.
Yeah, let him be happy to have a say in the matter after you just let go of a coach that he was close with. We didn't hear from Allen on the matter. Obviously, you shared that a message through a source about how Allen reacted to the news, but having him at least part of this is probably their way of saying, you may not have liked the decision that we made, but now you're going to have a legitimate say in who we bring in next, because we feel like you can get your game to another level as special as he's been. And that's why I think a lot of these guys, the majority of the people that they're interviewing, are on the offensive side of the ball.
All right. Let's get to Brian Daboll next, because to me, this one makes so much sense that you go back to the regular season when the Giants fired him, and we did a whole podcast episode talking about if the Bills should consider bringing him on as a senior assistant. The relationship with Josh, I think that his tenure in New York is generally misremembered because of how it finished over the last couple of years. There's a lot that went into why that train went off the tracks. And I think if you go back and really chart that entire 2.5 year road for Brian Daboll, there's a lot to like about it. I mean, going in, having to take an organization that missed the playoffs the year before with Daniel Jones at quarterback, figuring things out, getting things on the right spot, getting the best season to that point out of Daniel Jones to that point in his career. Number one, I mean, the Giants had a great draft this last year. Now they were picking in a pretty good spot, but I think that you trust Brian Daboll's voice in the room when evaluating some of these young players throughout the draft process. And so I'm high on the Daboll idea. I think that that's going to be a heavy consideration as we go through the process. And where do you land on Daboll?
Daboll's probably in my top 3 right now, definitely in my top 5. And I'm linking him with, a young offensive mind as the offensive coordinator. Davis Webb is who I would ideally pair him up with. Webb is, right now not an offensive coordinator, so this would be a promotion for him from what he's currently doing in Denver. He has familiarity with Daboll, close with Josh Allen, kind of like another stepping stone for him to become a head coach in his own right. So you bring his ideas over. He's been named this savant, he's going to be a great head coach in the near future. Let him work with Daboll, mix and match their personalities and ideas. And I think that could really work. Daboll, being in this league for such a long time, obviously has a ton of ties to coaches that he could bring in to fill out his staff options in terms of defensive coordinator. So for those reasons, I am higher on Daboll than I think maybe some Bills fans are. especially some here in the comments that don't seem too thrilled about the idea.
I think there's like a whole host of outcomes that could happen in combinations. Like if Daboll was the pick, I could see like a Davis Webb, like a Nathan Shieldhouse out of the Rams from the McVay tree, maybe making him an offensive coordinator. I could see Daboll, and even maybe if Joe Brady strikes out on all of the head coaching jobs, maybe you retain Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator because of his relationship with Josh Allen. And I think marrying Daboll and Brady is interesting. And if they go off and have the kind of year that you hope that they'd have, then Brady is a top candidate again next year. So I don't think he'd be against necessarily running it back with Josh Allen, the relationship that's there. I probably, like, if Daboll was coming in, want to go the Webb or Shieldhouse route, just because something new, changing it up. I thought Brady's success was very much intertwined with Aaron Cromer. Now, maybe you promote Austin Gunn to full-time offensive line coach, which I think I can get behind that idea. I think Gunn is super talented wherever he ends up going. I think he should be in the mix, even if it isn't Brady retained in some capacity. But Brady was also interviewed. And then Lou Anarumo, veteran defensive coordinator guy. Same thing with Anthony Weaver, who's expected to be interviewed tomorrow, former DC for Miami. I'd be much more comfortable with either of those guys as the defensive coordinator for an offensive head coach than I would be giving them the head coaching job.
And Anarumo, that wouldn't be an option because he's still under contract with the Colts, obviously. But I agree. I mean, he has schemed up some really good game plans against Josh Allen in his career, Patrick Mahomes in his career. I thought he did a brilliant job with a lot of those rosters in Cincinnati that didn't have the most talent and brought out the best in them. I thought he did a fine job this year in Indianapolis as well. But I don't know how you go from a defensive-minded head coach that won a lot of games to an older defensive-minded head coach who hasn't really had that opportunity and sell the fan base on it. And that's no knock on Anarumo because I am very high on him as a defensive mind. Weaver, he has time in Baltimore, time in Miami. The stats didn't ever look great in Miami. That doesn't mean he's not a really good couldn't be a really good head coach in the future. Not necessarily very high on that potential move either.
We got a super chat here from Chris. How many of these guys being interviewed would also take the offensive coordinator job if they don't get the head coaching job? Sign me up for McDaniel's Daboll as OC, but not head coach. Listen, if McDaniel is if he doesn't get the head coaching job and he ends up going to the Chargers as OC and Daboll doesn't get a head coaching job, I do think the pull of Josh would be something where he would consider the offensive coordinator job under a head coach. And I don't think that's necessarily the worst case scenario, but I think, like, in terms of the relationship, in terms of, the success that he had, at least in year one, I'd be much more apt to bring or open to bring Daboll in as head coach as opposed to the offensive coordinator side of things. Where do you land on it? I guess it depends on who the coach is. Like, if you hire Clint Kubiak, he's going to be calling the plays. I don't think that would necessarily make sense to then bring in Daboll as the OC.
Yeah, it's tough because, if he's the OC, he's going to want to call the plays. And in Kubiak's case, like you said, he'll probably want to do that. If you're going, though, with a Davis Webb, if you're that confident in him and somehow he lands the head coaching job, maybe then Daboll would take the reins of OC for a little bit. I know I just pitched it the other way around, but maybe it would work in that scenario. It all depends. I believe that he's also high on Tennessee's list for the OC job. I know Philly interviewed him. He's going to have some options if he doesn't land a head coaching job. And I know he loves Josh Allen and he's from Buffalo, a Buffalo guy. But at the same time, he's going to have to probably pick the best spot for him. And the best spot for him, whether it's a head coach or obviously an OC, is where he's going to be able to call his own plays.
The other name coming up, two more names coming up this weekend, is Anthony Lynn and then Grant Udinsky. And I want to talk about Udinsky a little bit. Really low on the Anthony Lynn idea. I mean, he was a finalist for the Bills job back when Sean McDermott got it. Obviously got to coach a game there. I think it was after Rex Ryan. Ended up going to the Chargers. was their head coach for a couple years and just never really went well there. Was the Lions OC for a year, then spent 2 years with the 49ers. And then this last year was the run game coordinator and the running backs coach for the Commanders. And it wasn't really a run game that I thought blew me away. Udinsky, however, to me, I would categorize him as my wild card, really like it idea. Like, he's young. He's not called plays yet. Two things that I think not necessarily working against him. I'm not against hiring a 30-year-old head coach by any stretch of the imagination. I went back and listened to a podcast he did, and shout out to Ari Mirov that did it with him, and then obviously the Cover One guys that did a
nice thread
on him. Yeah, on X. You can go check that out. But a really bright, I mean, his story is phenomenal. I mean, what he did to get to where he was going, spent time on a coaching staff for a couple seasons with Kevin O'Connell, which is like really one of the nice offensive young head coaches in the league. And then this last year with Liam Cohen, I really like this idea. Udinsky I would place him in the same tier as a Clint Kubiak for me.
Spoiler alert, he's my number one head coaching candidate right now.
Ooh, spicy meatballs from Calvin today.
All aboard Udinsky as the next head coach of the Bills. And a lot of it has to do with, again, the interview that you just mentioned. Cover One did a great thread on him. Great article as well on cleveland.com, one of our sister sites. Mary Kay Cabot wrote it and kind of went through his career and kind of breaking it down. The more I've read about him, the more videos I've watched of him, the more confident I am that he really could be the next big thing. And then you could bring in someone that has some more experience, like Anthony Lynn. I'm not looking at him as a serious head coaching candidate, but if you want to bring him in some kind of role on the staff as someone that's had some higher, positions on coaching staffs, I don't hate something like that. Udinsky, though, starting with his experience with Kevin O'Connell, he started out there in Minnesota at one point, or working through his ranks there, assistant to the head coach. And he talked about, pretty much living the day-to-day life of what it's like to be a head coach in the NFL, going to all the meetings and being there and getting to experience that. And now going over to Jacksonville and getting to work with Liam Cohen, and Cohen singing his praises in terms of how good he is at his job. I really think that if you're going to take a swing on someone, he would be my number one pick right now. And there's more guys we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, I'm sure. Clint Kubiak's still very high on my list. Lealhouse has actually dropped down just a little bit, just because I do worry about how quickly he's rising up the ranks, but also the inexperience level. It's not even quite, he doesn't quite have the same type of experience that Udinsky has or Kubiak has in terms of those unknown entities. So guys that I like there, but for me right now, Udinsky would be in my number one. Having his second interview today in Cleveland, one thing that works, not that I think he would take the job today anyways if it was a possibility, but Cleveland has not met the requirements of the Rooney Rule yet, so they couldn't even hire him if they wanted to at his second interview. So that at least gives the Bills a legitimate chance to talk to him, see if he's someone they want to bring back for a second interview. But, Bills fans, if you haven't learned much about him, go check out his story, his path, the offensive minds he's worked with. There was talk on social media about how the Bills, when they hired Rex Ryan, were really high on Kyle Shanahan, but they didn't know much about him, how he'd be as a head coach. And I almost wonder if that is the case, if that is true, if Terry Pagula and Brandon Beane don't want to necessarily miss out on the next big thing if they are that impressed by Udinsky.
Dude, I hate missing out anytime, like on the next big thing, right? And the good news about Topps Friendly Markets is that if you just head over there to get all stocked up for the weekend, you can go down every aisle and make sure you don't miss a thing. This playoff season, let Topps do the cooking and you'll be the real MVP. Visit takeoutmeals.topsmarkets.com and elevate your food game with great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop. The convenience of no fee pickup on all game day deals. There are no service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town. Score great deals in time for kickoff or any occasion. at takeoutmeals.topsmarkets.com. Okay, so the game happens this weekend. We'll see how it shakes out and which coordinators and position coaches are available for interview. If the Seahawks, because Clint Kubiak is very high on most people's list as somebody that the Bills are hoping the Bills interview. If they win and they go on to the Super Bowl, the Bills won't even be able to have a first interview with him until after the Super Bowl because of the rules in place that unless you got in on that first wave before the divisional round, you then have to wait until after the Super Bowl. So that's kind of a tough spot to be in for the Bills as kind of, musical chairs are happening. But I also will say of the couple of coaches here that are getting high on the list of people, I think most of them will chill out and wait because Daboll, especially because they want this job more than any other.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that's interviewing for this job will have the patience to wait it out because it's one of 32 jobs in this league and one of, I believe, 6 that are currently open. Maybe less than that right now. I'd have to kind of run through it in my mind. But yeah, everyone's going to wait. And if the Bills are waiting for Kubiak, it's going to be, one of the worst kept secrets that maybe he's very high on their list. That's what a lot of reports have already said. And given the opportunity, maybe he will really impress. So if they do win, the Bills can certainly wait. And if they win this game on Sunday, well, then I'm all about the Bills interviewing Schleelhaus from the Rams, Mike LaFleur from the Rams. Get both of them in here, pick their brains a little bit about how the McVay system would work for Josh Allen and work for this offense, how they would utilize him. Whoever loses in the NFC, the Bills win, in my opinion, because there's good offensive minds in both of those teams between Kubiak and the two names I just mentioned. So that one's great. Obviously, if you're a Bills fan, you probably don't want to root for New England to make it to the Super Bowl, which would then free up, Webb for an interview and things like that. But the same thing, if they are really high on Davis Webb, they're going to wait as long as need be.
The one good thing about Webb is that, I know he's getting head coach interviews and folks are super excited about him. And I'm not even necessarily out on the idea if he blows you away. I mean, there's some little bit of hang up for me and why he probably wouldn't be in my top 3 is just the dynamic between him and Josh. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that he wouldn't be that tough coach on him, but there's just like an element to it that I just think is a little bit funny. But either way, he'll still be in play for maybe a coordinator job, which is something that I think would be a promotion for him, something that I think you can get excited about if they do end up going with another coach. Like, I think if Daboll gets the head coaching job, it seems like a slam dunk home run to go with Davis Webb.
Yeah, absolutely. No argument here. And you mentioned it's a promotion. It's a place he's familiar with. A lot of the times, if you're in a good place like Denver and with a good offensive mind like Sean Payton, you're not going to just jump at the opportunity to become an offensive coordinator anywhere. But he's familiar with Buffalo. You're getting one of the best player in the NFL in Josh Allen. You're getting a coach in Daboll that you're familiar with. It just makes too much sense if that scenario plays out.
I think Bills fans should be flexible with this because one observation that I have about this entire head coaching carousel, the coverage of the search is that like you got all these takes getting spewed out on social media over and over again. And it's like, we really don't know. A lot of these candidates are great unknowns. Just because you're a great coordinator doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily be a great head coach. And I think it's just important to be a little bit flexible with it, as hard as that can be, because of like how this thing ended with Sean McDermott, right? And speaking of flexible, make travel planning less stressful with flex fares. Last minute schedule changes can be a headache, but with Amtrak's new, more affordable flex fares, you can adjust your trip without worry. If a concert gets postponed, someone gets sick, or a business meeting gets rescheduled, you can modify your booking without any cancellation or change fees. Use the Fare Finder at Amtrak.com. Book your trip with flex fares today.
Flex fares, flexible seating there on Amtrak. You can't beat it. Check it out if you're going anywhere in the next few months or even in the next year.
All right, we got about 5 minutes here left here, Talbot. Let's do our final rankings here. Talk me through your top three, and then I'll give my top three here.
All right. Number 3 for me right now is Clint Kubiak. Of the inexperienced, first-time head coach potential guys that are out there on the market, he has called plays for 2 years. He has some experience doing that. I thought that Seattle's offense looked very good this year. I thought Darnold looked good. The run game looked good, a very balanced attack. Now, keep in mind, they also had one of the best defenses in the league, which certainly makes your life a little bit easier as an offensive coordinator. But if you're going with an unproven entity, at least this is one that has some experience, comes from a family where his father's a former Super Bowl winning head coach. So it's in the bloodlines in terms of passion for the game, love of the game. It's been a big part of his life. So for me, he comes in at number 3. Number 2 for me is Brian Daboll. And I know that some fans are going to say, well, look how poorly it went with the Giants. Look how it ended there. And blowing all the fourth quarter leads this year. He did a phenomenal job with Jackson Dart. If you look at the stats, pre-Daboll, post-Daboll, there is a big jump in terms of Dart's play. He was really helping that rookie develop. I thought the first year he inherited a roster. It wasn't even a great roster. The one that he won Coach of the Year with, though, he was able to get them to the playoffs, win a playoff game. This Bills roster is certainly more talented than that one. This is a dream job for him being a Buffalo guy. It's hard to root against these Buffalo guys. I mentioned it earlier in the show too, Matt. This is someone that's been in the league for probably half of his life now. He can put together a good coaching staff fairly quickly based on the guys that he knows across this league. I believe that he could put together a really good OC, DC, O-line coach, top to bottom, put in a really good coaching staff for this team to keep them on track from where the Bills have been and maybe help them get to the next level. And I already revealed my number 1. You're going to go with the young kid from Jacksonville. I like everything that I've read about him. I feel like he can come in here. You can get a proven OC, someone that you can, bounce ideas off of. You bring him in here, though, based on his time with Kevin O'Connell, his time with Liam Cohen, how impressed I've been in terms of everything I've watched on him. I just think that Grant Udinsky is someone that the Bills can, if they're willing to roll the dice on an unproven entity, he would be my number 1 pick.
So my struggle with Udinsky getting him higher than like the wild card pick, which is probably he's somewhere between 3 and 4 for me. He probably was 3 this morning, and he's kind of moved out of that spot for Mike McDaniel as I've thought about maybe that being an option, which is a huge jump for me because I have not been the biggest fan of Mike McDaniel, but I'm thinking about what it can mean for this offense, what he probably learned over the last couple of years, and what I think he can bring from an evaluation standpoint to get the kind of players that the Bills just haven't hit on, right? Like really talented wide receivers, fast. That's something that I think would supercharge things here. But I don't know. Udinsky was 3 going into this day today for me, so I'm gonna stay on that spot. I like a little bit of everything. I like where he's been, like more than anything else, like who he's got to kind of brush shoulders with. I'm a big fan of Kevin O'Connell, and to be able to kind of study behind him for a couple years, then getting a 1 year getting thrown into the Liam Cohen world, I like that a lot. Before we get to number 2 and 3 on my list, Jackson Kelly here. One name I haven't heard is Frank Reich. He's an offensive mind, has head coaching experience, faith-based coach, which is what it seemed was important to Pagula with McDermott. I also think he'd gel with Josh Allen, and he's obviously got his own ties to the organization as a former backup quarterback here. He is now in Stanford as a special assistant, senior assistant there. I think he was coaching there for a couple of years after things ended in Indianapolis. 64 years old. I just don't know if that's the spot I'm looking to go to. Things didn't end well in Indy, and I'd almost be more open to a Frank Reich OC idea than I would as a head coach. Is that weird?
No, not at all. That would be the path I would go, or take the title he currently has as senior advisor, slap that on in the NFL level with one of these young head coaches, a mentor, someone that's done it as a head coach, played in this league, has that type of experience. Some label like that, I'm not against it, but no, I would not put him in as a serious contender for the head coaching job.
All right, so number 2 for me is Clint Kubiak, and for me, the biggest thing is what he's done this year again with Sam Darnold. I think has been really impressive. I think that the run game there, you go back and watch what they did against the 49ers. I know they were banged up, but I thought Kenneth Walker was a beast in that game. I think he's going to bring a lot of fun ideas. And he spent a year with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco in 2023. And I think you like all of these connections with some of these guys. I think there's an obvious reason that most people have him very high, if not the top spot on their list. For me, though, where I'm landing is Daboll. And obviously the big push for me is getting guys in here that, number one, can push Josh Allen. And I think that's where Daboll comes in. And then somebody that's like also that great young mind that could come in here and help really facilitate the offense. And I think that's where Webb fits in. I think that his relationship with Daboll and Josh Allen makes a ton of sense. There were issues at times with this offense when Daboll was here, the run game, and thank you for all the super chats. We really appreciate you when he was here. But I also think that you grow over time. And I think that, in-house, what's been in here over the last couple of years, I think that the people that will hang around learn something, and you could probably, steal a little bit of that. I think part of that too is like maybe hanging on to Austin Gunn for the run game.
Yeah. Daboll, I mean, our top 3 are essentially the same, just a little bit different of a combination. Daboll is number 2 on my list. If he ends up being the head coach, I think it would be a solid choice for the Bills. Some of the guys that can be retained here on this coaching staff, other coaches that he's met in his tenure as head coach, OC elsewhere, all the experience that he has in this league, just connections he's made. I go back to what I said. I think he can put together a very impressive coaching staff, and the familiarity with Josh Allen and with this team can certainly help him out.
I got a couple super chats here. I mean, man, people are firing them off today, Ryan. Everybody's getting juiced up before we get into the weekend here. Udinsky or Kubiak for Jay Scott? No Daboll. He's a bad coach. I disagree there, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. You'd go from 7 straight double-win seasons to probably a losing season. Quit gaslighting about him. All right, dude was the coach of a year 3 years ago. So I'm going to run you out of here for that, Jay Scott.
Listen, jokes on him. I still don't understand what gaslighting means. I hear it all the time from my daughter. I don't even want to know. I can't figure it out. So I'm sure it's more simple than I'm thinking, but I hear
I'm going to get on like TikTok or something. I'll find you an instructional video.
All right. Please do.
All right, cool. All right, here's another super chat. Giants fan here. Daboll may have issues assembling a good staff. He's hard to work with. This is a good point. C-Wink Martindale, and lacks the temperament to be a head coach. I strongly believe that some of our worst character traits sometimes need to be tested, and then changes need to be pointed out and revealed to us before we're able to make those changes. I think this probably was a really eye-opening tenure in Brian Daboll. And oh, by the way, he had to do it in the toughest media market in the country. And listen, does he hold a piece of the pie for why things didn't go well in New York? 100%. But I also think there is a structure in Buffalo that would lend itself to helping him kind of keep some of those things into check. Does he have to be your number one option? Without a doubt, he does not have to be. There's probably, a lot of fans that would rather roll the dice with an unknown commodity like a Clint Kubiak or Grant Udinsky over someone like Brian Daboll, who just, for whatever reason, the New York tenure doesn't sit well with them. And I respect that.
Yeah. These head coaches, though, you only get about 2 chances in this league unless you somehow win a ring somewhere. Daboll knows that this is a golden opportunity. He's learned a lot, I'm sure, from his time in New York. Same with Mike McDaniel. If the Bills end up being serious about him, he's learned a lot from his time in Miami. I know the end of the seasons never went very well there in the December-January time, but he also never had a quarterback like Josh Allen. We saw how well those offenses ran. So they both probably learned lessons about who they would be able to count on to bring in as an OC, DC. fill up their staff. And that's why some of these experienced former head coaches do have a little bit, I don't want to say more to offer, but it can be very intriguing because of how quickly they can fill up a staff.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. The most uncomfortable ride for Ryan Talbot in our history. I think he's got 3 or 4 animals that are either under his legs, under his shoes, under his armpits. They're everywhere. They're taking over at the Talbot household.
2 cats, 2 dogs, always want to be around me.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.